College, and new at his job he is. We will talk tonight with Orville Carnahan about what technical colleges offer and where they fit into the scheme of things, especially in this changing society we live in. Whether you're reading Alvin Toffler or not, I guess you have figured out by now that this is not exactly the same world that's been around for the last few years. Things are changing very rapidly. Dr. Carnahan, you have been in a position, most recently, as I said, associated with Utah Technical College, but just before that, you were the president of Southern Utah State College in Cedar City. That sounds like apples and oranges. Is this a change for your career?
In a way, it is a change. The coursework, the college classes offered at the Tech College are primarily for people interested in going immediately into the world of work, whereas Southern Utah State College is geared quite extensively towards liberal arts degrees at the bachelor's level.
I'm sure there are people with liberal arts degrees who are doing quite well, thank you, but I keep hearing these stories about people who are finding a very difficult time getting into the job market, and I hear about other people who don't have a college education but who have a skill, like, well, I couldn't use carpentry tonight because with the recession in home building, that's not a good example tonight, but any variety of things, plumbing, electrical work, electrician and so forth. Those people seem to have a little bit better shot at earning a living. Now, I'm sure that's a gross overgeneralization, oversimplification, because there's probably a lot of people in between who are somewhere in between. But do you think that Utah Technical College has some kind of a, whether you've done research on this, I don't know, but at least you have the potential for almost guaranteeing people a fairly sound economic start once they get their degree?
Well, over the past few years, I would say that those preparing for specific skill employment and specific technical hands-on employment do appear to have a greater chance of being employed immediately at completion of their education. That's not necessarily true. For instance, I recall the swing of the pendulum for engineers. Right now, an engineer probably can get a job with a bachelor's degree as quickly as someone with a two-year technical degree. But essentially, that is true at the present time in Utah. For those people who are interested in starting work, I guess as they're entering the field, the bachelor's degree and beyond is geared more for those who are starting into the world of business and industry with the thought in mind that they will soon move into management, middle management, or whatever. But for the entry-level jobs that are most available right now, a person getting education, preparing them specifically for skill training or technical hands-on work, the jobs are plentiful. Many of the students have have at least several options to pick from.
I hear the expression, the graying of the American campus. Is that true at Utah Technical College?
Yes, it is. I think the average age at the technical college right now is probably somewhere around 27 or 28. And just a few years ago, it would have averaged 22 or less. So that is true. I know it's true up at the university. In my experience outside of the state, it may have progressed faster than it has in Utah, and that is definitely the case.
I've also understood that the older a person gets, it's not necessarily that it's impossible or even difficult to learn new skills and learn new things, but psychologically, people as they get older fear changing job directions or career directions. But again, with some of the harsh realities that the economy has dealt recently, I imagine people would have a little extra boot in the pants to overcome that fear, huh?
I think that's true. Having passed the half-century mark, I find myself somewhat more reluctant to make changes of any kind, but the pressures being what they are, and having heard that the average person will change their direction significantly 5 times as far as the job they're doing, I think that we'll see it going more that direction.
When I was in high school, let's say 20 years ago in California, I had a counselor who said one time to me, and I thought he was pulling my leg or just trying to really impress me or something, but he said, Bob, he said, I really don't know what kind of career advice to give you in the long run, because he said by the time you are even out of college, there are going to be, I guess the Department of Labor or some government agency publishes job descriptions and job titles. He said there are going to be things on that list that haven't even been invented yet. And again, I skeptically thought, well, fat chance, but now I've seen that, and I don't think it was a prophecy especially, but I've seen that come true. Could you still make that statement in 1981? Could you say 5-10 years from now it'll be that much different?
I think that we'll see at least as much of a change in the next 10 years as we saw in the past 10 years in that very way. Take, for instance, the field of data processing or working with computers. I thought that had settled down, and just recently I've discovered that the changes are beginning to speed up again, and there may be what's called a complete turnover in 5 years, so that what we're doing now may be literally obsolete in 5 years, requiring a tremendous amount of retraining.
So how does Utah Technical College either take advantage of that or whatever, compared to, say, the University of Utah or Weber State or USU or BYU or anybody else?
Well, one of the major thrusts or major responsibilities of a school like Utah Tech is to establish contacts with business and industry such that those interested in retraining, either the individual or the business, can immediately have that opportunity and do that retraining. And because that is not a specific part of the goal of the university, we're much more geared to that intentionally.
What is the number one or the hottest item, if you will, that's being offered at Utah Technical College right now, at least in terms of enrollment?
The whole business area, data processing or computers being at the heart of it, but it's the whole broad area of business at less than a bachelor's degree. We're getting pressures in many areas, and we have waiting lists of up to a year in more than just business, but the tremendous pressure is right in the area of business.
Do you ever find that a typical student at Utah Technical College would be a professional white-collar sort of person who was there not so much for career reasons, but just sort of either trying to create a safety net for themselves to pick up a skill, or would that really be quite an exception, to find somebody sort of dabbling like that instead of really intensely trying to retrain for the job market?
No, that's not exceptional. In fact, in the last 2 or 3 years, that's become more common. We have students on the campus right now as full-time and part-time students who already have a bachelor's and possibly a master's degree, but for a number of reasons, one of which is job security or a fallback position. They are there picking up training in a specific skill or technical area.
Orville Carnahan is our guest on Public Pulse tonight. He's the new president at Utah Technical College, and we're talking about that tonight, so join us on Public Pulse.
To call Public Pulse, dial area code 801-531-TALK. Calls are taken in the order they are received, so let the line ring until it's your turn. 531-TALK, and you'll be on the line on 1160 KSL.
Green tags mean greater savings every day at Bobco's. But right now, green tags mean even greater savings during Bobco's Green Tag Case Lot Sale. That's right, every Bobco's store is stacked to the rafters with cases of green tag specials, making this the perfect time for you to fill your cupboards or add to your family food storage. It's a special limited sale, and it's happening now. Bobco's Green Tag Case Lot Sale. One more reason why
Bobco's is cheaper than anywhere else.
Don't Don't miss this year's exciting Utah State Fair. Now through September 20th, you'll enjoy thousands of exhibits, fun carnival rides and games, plus 2 special musical shows each night, featuring headliners like Roger Miller, Bobby Goldsboro, Lynn Anderson, Donna Fargo, and Janie Fricke. It's all at the spectacular 1981 Utah State Fair. Your family will love the new County Square west of the Administration Building and the Children's Barnyard tent where they'll get a first-hand look at the baby animals. It's tons of fun in 81 at the Utah State Fair.
Ladies and gentlemen, R.C. Willey Home Furnishing Centers, both in Murray and in Syracuse, are closed as I speak to you. That's right, they've closed early on a business day to allow special cruise time to move up and down the aisles of famous Lazy Boy, Thomasville, Armstrong, Stratford, Serta, Zenith, Lee, Lane, Pulaski, Jackson, Maytag, Tell City, Broyhill, and a host of other name brands to allow those cruise time to reduce prices on every item in every department at both huge R.C. Willey Home Furnishing Centers in Murray and in Syracuse. There's going to be a 12-hour sale. A single-day 12-hour sale tomorrow from 10 a.m. tomorrow morning until 10 p.m. tomorrow night. It's $6 million big. I believe it's the big one for 1981. Say, see that big ad from R.C. Willey in tonight's Ogden Standard-Examiner, the Desert News, and tomorrow morning's Salt Lake Tribune.
It is currently 71 at KSL in downtown Salt Lake City, and there's a slight chance of a few thunderstorms along the Wasatch Front tomorrow. It'll be sunny tomorrow morning, but then partly cloudy as the day wears on. And by the time Sunday arrives, it should be in the mid-80s, as opposed to the temperatures today, which were fully 10 degrees above normal. It should have been 79 at the airport. It was 89. And we're talking with the president of Utah Technical College tonight, Orville Carnahan, and let's take some phone calls. Hi, you're on the air, and where are you calling from?
Hi, Salt Lake.
Your question.
Yes, I'm a local businessman, and I'd like to pick up some computer skills. I've had a little bit of training. I'd kind of like to step into some more advanced programming classes because I find I really could use that. What are the chances of that, and how would I go about it?
The chances of that are good in that the courses are available. The difficulty is that because of the number of people interested, there may be possibly a waiting list for the particular class or classes that you would be interested in.
Okay, other than that, though, no real...
Other than that, no real problem.
Yeah. Is Utah Technical College, I don't mean to position yourself... or to have you position yourself against other organizations any more than you have to, but are you really the only one that would offer this particular specialty the caller's interested in?
No. As a matter of fact, because of the demand for computer skills, a number of schools do offer that. For instance, I don't know to what extent, but I'm sure similar to Utah Tech, Weber State College has the same kind of a program, and I know that other colleges in the state have similar kinds of offerings. The difference is that ours may be more directly related to the technical side of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that was a good question. Thank you, and we'll field some more calls. Hi, you're on the air, and where are you calling from?
Salt Lake City.
Your question?
The vocational school in Provo, do they have a division for the deaf? Now, I understand they do. And
because the school in Provo is totally separate from Utah Technical College at Salt Lake, I'm really not familiar with what offerings they have.
In the general area of handicapped students, what does the campus at Salt Lake offer?
Again, because I'm so new, I can't answer that specifically, except to say that we are in the process and have been for several years in trying to make any course or program available to any handicapped person who is in a position to take advantage of it.
All righty, that was a good question. Thank you. On to another line. Hi, you're on the air now, and where are you calling from?
Midvale. I was just wondering, what do they have at Trade Tech for a disabled person?
Okay, we kind of touched on that, I guess, just now.
Yes, we did. I can't answer that specifically because I'm too new to know, but I do know that there's a great deal of concern about how we address to meeting the needs of any person with any kind of a handicap.
What about scholarships or some sort of financial aid at a place like Utah Technical College. Is that different than as opposed to the University of Utah, for example?
It's different only in that the kinds of scholarships, specialized scholarships, would be different and would be pointed in a different direction. But for instance, the general student financial aids that are available from federal student financial aid sources are identical at the university and at the Tech College.
Okay, we'll take some more calls for our guest on Public Pulse tonight, the new president of Utah Technical College in Salt Lake City, Dr. Orville Carnahan. Stay with us.
Salt Lake City, pay attention, or you'll miss out on some of the greatest fall savings in the valley. Berry Manufacturing, Utah's largest factory outlet of fine men's clothing, has thousands of suits, sport coats, and accessories on sale right now. Listen to these bargains. 100% wool, hand-tailored three-piece suits in pinstripes or in solids, a remarkable low price of $19.95. Tweed and herringbone sport coats, they're all wool and wool blend with suede elbow patches, and are on sale from a low $48.95. Now, to coordinate with these sport coats, Berry Manufacturing has 100% wool slacks on sale at only $26.95. And Berry Manufacturing has missionary suits, American-made two-pant vested Swedish knit suits from a low $89.95. And you'll get a 10% discount to the already low price. And if you mention KSL Radio, you're going to get free alterations on the first suit that you buy. Berry Manufacturing, 2325 South, 3rd West in Salt Lake City.
By now, you've heard almost everything there is to say about East Canyon Resort, about the 10,000 acres of mountain and meadowland left unspoiled for your pure enjoyment, about it being a four-season resort with camping, hiking, horseback riding, and water sports of all kinds in the spring and summer, with snowmobiling and cross-country skiing in the winter. You've heard how East Canyon Resort will remain in its natural state with only a few touches of civilization, like a two-story dwelling owners will enjoy for a minimum of 17 days each year, completely furnished right down to the dishes. The only thing left is to see it. Why not this weekend? East Canyon Resort invites you to drop in at the Information Center a quarter-mile south of East Canyon Reservoir anytime. Come on Saturday or Sunday between 11:30 and 6 and enjoy a barbecue meal on the house. Tours of beautiful East Canyon Resort leave every hour from the Information Center located a quarter-mile south of the reservoir on Highway 65. If you're interested in being an owner of East Canyon Resort, come see for yourself this weekend. 9:23 on Public Pulse. Hi, you're on the air with the president of Utah Technical College. What's your question, please?
Yes, I want to find out something. I have an associate science degree in forestry, and then all told, I've got about 81 hours, semester hours completed. How long? But some of this was done up to 10 years ago, like at a university, like English and history and this kind of stuff. I'm interested in going after a business and also possibly accounting, and then also I was interested in your business technology, and I'm looking at a long-range type program because I'm working in the day and I plan to do this in the night. Will I lose hours coming from, say, 10 years ago? Will I lose some of those credits that I've already
earned? The only way
earned?
that you would lose hours coming from, say, 10 years ago is if they don't apply specifically to the program you're interested in and therefore could not transfer into it. If you've had courses that meet any of the requirements for the program, I'm sure that those would be transferable.
But obviously, the gentleman's question or anybody's question in that area would take some specific examination by somebody, and so you'd have to go in, I guess, to Utah Tech or wherever and check it out.
That's correct. It would have to be reviewed probably by our student center to see which of the courses would apply to the business programs at the college or other programs.
Okay, thanks for calling, and on to another line. Hi, you're on the air now, and your question, please.
Yes, I'm calling from Salt Lake, and I'm a student out there at the UTC, and I transferred down from the U of U, and I am just thoroughly amazed at the quality and the individuality of the instructors out there. But my question is in regards to the Associate of Applied Science and the Associate of Science degree, which they're talking about out there right now. And I was just wondering, as far as transferring credits, like going up to the U of U with an Associate of Applied Science, how come they won't take as much credit as if I were to have an Associate of Science degree? What's the difference between the two?
The Associate of Applied Science is designed specifically for those not planning to eventually apply it towards a bachelor's degree. Therefore, the coursework is not transferable because it just does not fit the university programs. The university does not have vocational education within the definition of vocational education that we operate with. But whereas the Associate of Science degree will be geared more specifically toward university or four-year college bachelor's degrees, and a far greater part of it, in fact, probably all of it, would be transferable into an existing program at the university or at another four-year school.
Okay, thank you. Hi, you're on the air now, and your question, please.
Yes, I have three questions I'd like to ask the new president. I guess the first one, I was just kind of curious why he would go, what his interests were in going from a larger four-year college to a smaller technical college.
Okay, let me let the president answer that question. We kind of touched on that earlier, but...
Okay, the reason for that, first let me say that the four-year college where I was president had 2,000 students, and the tech college has about 7, so size, in reference to size, this is a larger school. But the reason for my change, first, because I was encouraged by many vocational education friends, but also prior to being president of Southern Utah State College, I spent 15 years in two-year colleges that were involved in the vocational and technical kinds of programs that the tech college here has. And so I'm really coming back to an area with which I have more familiarity.
Okay, your other question?
And I was also wondering what basically his specific, well, I could combine these last two, the specific plans that he has for the college, and specifically I was wondering, there's been some talk about converting the technical college from a technical college into more of a community college, and this has kind of been a little back and forth on this with
Well, I think we can anticipate the question. What changes do you have in mind, and is one of the changes his description there?
Well, the definition of community colleges that is most commonly accepted in Utah is an incorrect one, I think, because a community college is just a college attempting to meet the needs of the community. The difference at the tech college here is that the emphasis is, and in my opinion, in my philosophy, will continue to be placed on vocational and technical kinds of programs. But we now offer a fairly narrow scope of even vocational and technical programs. And as we broaden that scope, especially into some of the service areas, and by service areas I mean like hotel, motel, food service, air transportation, and the things tied in with tourism, if we broaden into programs of that nature, they have a broader base of general education classes, and therefore we would increase the percentage of general education. But again, my own philosophy is that this is a good tech college meeting the needs of the Salt Lake Valley, especially for vocational and technical programs, and that should continue to be the major emphasis.
Okay, thanks for the question, and we'll have more, I'm sure, as we continue. Our guest tonight is Orville Carnahan, the new president of the Utah Technical College.
To call Public Pulse, dial area code 801-531-TALK. Calls are taken in the order they are received, so let the line ring until it's your turn. 531-TALK. And you'll be on the line on 1160 KSL.
Hi, Sam and Lila Weller for Zion's Bookstores, 254 South.
Lake City, And I had a question regarding their placement rate out there as far as employment's concerned in the student's field of study. I heard T.H. Bell, or I read an article, I believe, that he mentioned back in 1978 that the placement rate out there was like 80%. Is that true, or is it still as high?
Some programs, the placement rate probably reaches pretty close to 100%. Other programs, of course, the placement rate would be considerably lower than that. But I don't think that 80% is out of line at all as placement for the students out there. And one of the reasons it's only that low is that some of them do not choose immediately to go into employment after completing their schooling.
How much is that sort of a statistic likely to change from one year to the next? Is that a...
It's fairly consistent unless something unexpected comes along, like the what happened to housing. I'm sure that it's more difficult now for a graduate of our building construction trades program to find a job, and yet that may not be true, because I hear that commercial building construction is growing about fast enough to offset the home building construction. But it doesn't vary significantly in most programs.
Okay, good question. Thank you. Hi, you're on the air on Public Pulse, and from where, please?
From Salt Lake.
Your question?
Yes, Dr. Carnahan.
Yes.
I understand that last year the applied part of your distributive education program did not carry any credits. What are your plans in regards to that program?
I'm not familiar with what the program had last year in relation to the number of classes that carried credit, but the major emphasis and the major purpose for the program is technical college credit, not necessarily credit that would transfer to a four-year college. But it's my feeling that it would be primarily credit courses.
Okay, does that answer your question?
Not exactly. I'm curious specifically about the Distributive Education Club, which previously had carried a credit, and it's basically oriented into putting into practice all of the business principles which you learn in that area. And last year, for the first time, it did not carry a credit. And I was just curious. I'm interested in that organization. I was curious if he has made a decision about that or not.
I have not addressed to that specifically since I've been here, but I do know that in the last year or so there's been a fairly careful review of which kinds of classes really should carry credit and which kind, because of their orientation nature, may not really fit in the credit class category.
Okay, we trust that'll handle you for the moment, and thank you for calling. Realizing that you have a big job and you have a lot of things to handle and a lot of demands on your time, how do you how would you express your philosophy as far as, now I've heard administrators not only in education but elsewhere somehow I get the feeling that they're exaggerating, but they talk about this open door policy that, to facilitate communications. You've been around, you've been at a number of schools and had some rich experiences in education. How much can a person like yourself really stay in touch, in quotation marks, with people who want to talk to you?
It really is quite difficult. If I were to have totally an open door for all of those who wish to see me, I couldn't even visit with all of them, and would not then be able to take care of the other kinds of things, management kinds of things that are necessary. And so I guess I would call my philosophy a controlled open door, and rely on my secretary to kind of assist me in identifying those that are, I don't know how best to put it, that appear to have more of a need to see the president and not as much of a need to see someone else who could perhaps answer the question as well or better.
The question stems from the fact that the whole style of one's management, of course, is a personal thing, but on the other hand, it's a professional sort of a thing. People listening to this program tonight who may have questions or or whatever about what's going on. The fact that you may not have an immediate answer for them on this program is certainly not indicative of the fact that there is not an answer available. It's just that with so many detailed kinds of questions at an institution that large, I don't think one person could possibly know the answer to all those.
Well, that's correct. In fact, I would say in excess of 90% of the questions that would come to the college or that would come to me could better be answered by someone other than myself, because they're closer to the specific kinds of things that would qualify them to answer it.
Okay. But don't let that concern you. If you do have a question or a comment for our guest tonight, have at it. Our guest tonight is the new president of the Utah Technical College here in Salt Lake City, Orville Carnahan, and we'll have more coming up. Dr. Orville Carnahan, the president of the Utah Technical College. Most recently, he was the president of Southern Utah State College, and that's a school in Cedar City here, but his background is very rich. He's been at several schools, and as we indicated earlier in the program, really this current experience of his is probably closer to his main line of experience. A little news item yesterday. You never know how substantive this rumor is, but the rumor has it that, and of course this isn't too surprising because Reagan promised he would, but the rumor has it now that President Reagan has targeted the Department of Education for extinction. What does that sort of announcement, be it rumor or more factual, time will tell, mean to a man like yourself now, as opposed to what it would have meant, say, at a slightly different kind of school at Southern Utah State College?
I don't think that it means a very... I think it would be about the same whether I were at SUSC or here at the Tech College, because most of the kinds of things that are impacted at the federal level through the Office of Education are similar to both schools.
Do you have any strong feelings one way or the other about the Department of Education, about your dealings with it over the years in your career?
I don't have real strong feelings about it. I have gained a great deal of assistance, or the schools where I have been have gained a great deal of assistance from them, on the one hand. On the other hand, there are many times, or at least in some programs, where I felt that the strings attached, if you would, were such that they offset the value that could be gained.
A lot of criticism directed at American education lately. It's been the cover story of a lot of weekly news magazines and so forth. Now, again, maybe I'm qualifying this question too much, but has there been any valid criticism of the sort of thing that Utah Technical College has offered in the past, getting away from maybe some of the general criticisms of education in this country?
I think that there are some valid criticisms. I think that there are some kinds of things that perhaps could have been done better. Applying that specifically to the technical college, one of the concerns that we work with most constantly is that with the rapid change in technology and the rapid change in demands for kinds of training in any field, we're always concerned that we may be teaching to obsolescence to some extent in any one of our programs. And I think that we have come close enough to it, or have done it, if we're typical of the other technical schools around the country, that there is some valid criticism there. I don't know the solution to it, but that's the one that comes to mind first.
You've been in such diverse places as Iowa and Washington. Would you say that the sort of thing that you hope to accomplish in Salt Lake City could have been accomplished easier in either of those two examples, Iowa, Washington, or how would you describe the support of those communities compared to, say, this area?
Well, one of the things that attracted me to Utah initially 5 years ago, when I was encouraged to come into the state office, was the strong support of education at all levels by the people of Utah in general, and the strong support that education has received over the years from the legislature and from others in the state. And I would say that that support generally is greater in Utah. Now, we have come upon some bad times money-wise, not just higher education, but all people who look to the legislature for financial assistance. And again, I think that Utah higher education has fared as well, and in some instances, some specific instances, much better than some other states.
Okay, we'll have more coming up. If you have a question or a comment for the president of Utah Technical College, Dr. Orville Carnahan, our number is area code 801-531-TALK, 801-531-TALK.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'm Bob Lee, and our guest tonight is the president of Utah Technical College. And I must say that we haven't mentioned this earlier in the program, but as I recall, we did talk about the institution on an earlier edition of Public Pulse. And forgive me for not remembering right offhand the name of the guest on that occasion, but we were making the point that it is still a misunderstood institution. There are people who've grown up here along the Wasatch Front and still refer to it as trade tech and still think that they know what's happening over there. But as one of the earlier calls tonight indicated, a transfer from the University of Utah sounded like a fairly young person. He was surprised at some of the things you were doing. So is part of your... I don't know how you accomplish this. I don't know how anybody in this world does, but how do you propose to get the word out, that, to let people know what you're doing?
Well, needless to say, I've considered that extensively since I've been here. I personally have been attempting to speak to a number of civic groups, civic clubs. We have discussed a number of ways of doing it, but I think still most consistently it's done by word of mouth from our students who are happy with what they have, what they find out there, and with others who find the campus and are pleased with what they see.
Isn't that a little slow, though, sometimes? Because word of mouth is very, very effective, as I understand advertising, but how does an institution like yours utilize the mass media? Of course, we're doing it right now, in a sense, but... do you ever have plans for advertising, if I could use that word?
Well, one of the reasons why we don't do very much specific advertising is that we have more students throughout the system, and especially at the Tech College, we have more students than what we have sufficient dollars to provide education now. And the feeling of a number of people with whom the college works very closely is that until we have sufficient funds for those already clamoring at our doors, we shouldn't be out too aggressively encouraging others to come. And so that's a bit of a problem. The real thing we want to do is to make people aware of what we do have so that they can use that as one of the alternative choices to a post-high school education.
If you had to deliver the commencement address at one of the local high schools, and I guess which high school would depend or would modify your answer to this question, because there is a difference, obviously, between high schools. But generally, though, if you had to deliver a commencement address, and for all I know you've done this in the past, what kinds of advice do you give students who are on their way out of high school, realizing that not all are on their way to college, but all ultimately should be thinking about the job market in some way?
One of the first things I would say is to suggest that they seek a counseling center, either at the university or at the Tech College or somewhere else, or rely very heavily on their own high school counselors to let them get a good picture of the whole spectrum of careers that's available, and then take advantage of some of the interest inventory and related kinds of what are called tests to find out if their interests fit any particular career, and then find out something about it, rather than, as so many students do, jump from one class to another or one school to another and try to find out that way, because that takes a long time.
On the other hand, if you had to talk to what you're doing right now, of course, but if you were talking to maybe an audience that you could see, as opposed to this audience tonight, which we really can't see here in the studio, if you were talking to people who had been in the job market for 10, 20, or even more than that years, what kind of encouragement would you give them, not necessarily to go to Utah Technical College per se, but just does that same sort of advice apply to the person who has been in the job market a long time?
I think it really does. A much higher percentage of those just out of high school are undecided about their careers, many of those who've been in the job market have finally worked their way through the choices and have a much better idea of what they want. But even those, unless they're absolutely firm in what they want to pursue, should take the time, and it isn't too much time, to find out from counseling centers more detailed information concerning those areas where their interest lies.
Okay, stay with us. Public Pulse continues. Technical College has been our guest tonight, Dr. Orville Carnahan, and we can't begin on a talk show like this to talk about everything, I suppose, but at least we've, I think, had a good chance to be a little philosophical but a little practical, too, and indicate that there is a very real place for a school like Utah Technical College, and unfortunately, a lot of people in our society, it's right under their nose, literally, and they don't even know about it, and it could have been the solution to a lot of professional crises and personal crises, but people just didn't know about it. So what can we say? People should learn about these things and take advantage of them.
Perhaps we're remiss in not working more aggressively to make people aware, but I think that's so true. If we don't know all of those opportunities, of all the opportunities available, it makes our choice a little less accurate, I guess I would say.
Is there a real good beginning for people who are kind of at a doldrums in their educational or professional lives right now? You did mention vocational counseling and personal counseling and stuff like that. Are there other things, any good books on the market? There's so many books that you hardly know where to begin, but...
Well, there are some good books. I've always been fascinated with Peter Drucker and some of those, and there are lots of cassettes now, books and cassettes, many of them. There are, I would say, if someone were taking a look at it, still the best thing they can do is to look at very basic general education courses that appear generally in the direction they're interested in, and then build from there into the more specific.
Well, Dr. Carnahan, it's nice having you on Public Pulse tonight, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who are excited to have you at the helm of Utah Technical College, and we're looking forward to it.
Thank you very much.